Welcome to the Groove Pod, where two cousins, music lovers, and audiophiles talk about their journeys with various types of equipment, including digital, streaming, vinyl, and everything else you can think of. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Groove Pod. And Nick, I believe you've been doing some shopping for vinyl lately.
Well, I have, but I wasn't planning on doing it. So I was out and about with my eldest daughter, Kendall, and she wanted to go into an antique store, which, I mean, when you're a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old, cool, hip tween, I guess that's what you want to do now. That wasn't what I wanted to do when I was 12, almost 13. But anyway, and so in we go, and we were looking at cool old, vintage jackets and hats and art and all that kind of stuff. And I turned the corner and they've got some vinyl records. I was like, cool, all right. There's something for me to go look at. So I start flipping through and I actually found a couple of albums that were on my wish list, on my Discogs wish list. And the prices were fine. They weren't crazy. They weren't also bargain basement, but I thought, I'll support this small business. So I grabbed the records and, or I should say, I picked the first one up, and there was a price on it, but I couldn't really see anything else to sort of indicate essentially how it's graded. What's the quality of this record? So I go up to the front counter and I said, "Hi, can you tell me how you grade your records?" And I sort of got a bit of a blank stare from the person, and they said, Is it not in the sleeve? I said, no. It's the record's in the sleeve. No. I mean, how do you in this store? How is it that you sort of grade or score or rate, or what do you use in order to indicate the quality of the record? Whether it's in a mint condition or if it's in a really poor condition, et cetera, et cetera. And I just got more blank stares, and they were like, "Well, if it's not in the sleeve, let us know. We'll try find another one." I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's okay. This person doesn't know, and I politely asked if there was maybe someone else there that was more familiar with the records, and there was, but they also sort of didn't really know what I was talking about. And this actually happened twice in two different stores in the space of about a month. I was in another store once again with both of my daughters, a used bookstore, and stumbled upon vinyl records, and also they had some great ones. Now they were a little different in that they had, if something was essentially either brand spanking new because it was new stock, or was sort of considered new old stock or mint, it was sealed. So that, there was at least a distinction there of like, if it's sealed, then we sort of consider that brand new and sort of, I guess, mint or mint minus, whatever they say on Discogs. But for everything that wasn't, they also didn't have a grading system, or at least they didn't know how it was graded. And so that got me thinking, well, what do I do? Because every time I've bought a record, especially off Discogs from a seller, I am looking for the grading, and that's sort of helping me inform whether I make a purchase or not. And when it arrives, I sort of know what to look for to some degree, and then I know sort of what to listen for to some degree to make sure that they're giving me what I bought, what I've paid for. But when I'm not presented with anything, when I'm not presented with any sort of grading or rating, I don't know what to do. And so I thought I'd sort of bring that sort of that challenge to our listeners and maybe even to you, Locke, if you've had an experience with that. Because I mean, I think you can get the actual record out of the sleeve, and you can sort of look at it from a bit of a horizontal sort of angle, sort of get it up at your eye line, and certainly look for scratches. I mean, that's obviously easy, right? Can you see scratches, either big deep ones or more shallow ones? And that's an obvious thing, and certainly something I did. But I really couldn't think of what else I could do sort of in the moment there to ascertain whether or not what the quality or grade level was of these records. So I'll stop there. There's my little story. What do you think?
This raises so many burning questions. So many. Question one: what were the records that were even worth buying? What did you get?
A very eclectic mix, which I'm very happy with. The first, I'm going to hold it up to the camera even though no one else can see it, but the first is the Brecker Brothers, back to back. Do you know the Brecker Brothers?
I know the Brecker Brothers. Should I know the Brecker Brothers? Tell us about the sound.
I see. This is fascinating. I thought you introduced me to the Brecker Brothers.
No.
This is from 1976. And the Brecker Brothers, we may have to look this up, but they're sort of like they're sort of funk big band. They're a brass heavy. I think there's two main Brecker Brothers, and I think one is essentially on saxophones and one is on sort of trumpets. And they do this sort of, it's jazz, it's funk, but it's also, I sort of describe it as it's like a not a sinister quality to it, but it's not like all like bright and pop and
Mm-hmm.
bubbly. Like there's some really very, very clever things what they do with sort of tempo and time signature and keys and stuff. And a lot of it's really very fast and technical. And this is fascinating. I would have sworn you were the person that introduced me to them. Are you
Yeah,
looking
not
them up right
me.
now?
I am. They're coming up on Cobras as all being jazz, is how it's listed.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So I've thrown a couple of I've put their back-to-back album that you've got there into my Discovery playlist to go and have a listen to later on. And they've released one in 2008 called Return of the Brecker Brothers.
Oh my god, I thought one of them died. I didn't realize that.
I'm terrified that the 2008 one is going to be so full of electronic synthesized sounds that I just think ruins so much music. I
Yep.
love a good bit of electronic music, but my point is when jazz and funk and similar genres started playing with early synthesizers, I just thought the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them sounded dreadful. So, we're not talking about people like Herbie Hancock that used them amazingly well in stuff like, was it Watermelon Man and that era? And the Headhunters albums, the one I'm
Yep.
thinking of?
Yep.
That was incredible. So I'm not having a dig at that, but it's a great example is when Stevie Wonder went through his period, like Conversation Piece, I think was one of the albums. And I love the music. I loathe the instrumentation of them because it's like, just use real instruments. It
Right.
would have sounded so much better.
Oh my gosh. I could totally agree,
So
100%.
I'm terrified of that. But anyway, back to the Brecker Brothers. I've got those in there. They're apparently jazz.
Well, jazz fusion, but the way that I don't know why, but I always describe them as like sinister. And
Fascinated to
what
listen now.
yeah, but it's so interesting. I wonder if other people or if you, Locke, would sort of agree with that when you listen to it, because it's very fast. Lots of they play in really interesting time keys and modes, and I think they play with a lot of sort of discordant, but
Okay.
but they sort of ride that edge between. Anyway, you got to listen to it. And so this is their second album, and I already have their first album on vinyl, and so this was their second album, which is called Back to Back,
Okay.
and it was $5. And I
Okay.
looked at it in the store, and I went, "That looks okay. It doesn't look terrible, doesn't look great." But I
Mhm.
thought $5, I'll have a go at that and see how that sounds.
And that actually, let's pick up on that because that leads to one of the other burning questions I had, which was, were the prices low enough that you're happy to take a swing?
Yes, I think for this album. So yeah, this was $5, and I think that's actually a great price. And when I look at it, to me, this actually looked really good. I
Mhm.
didn't see any like scratches. There's like a couple of little scuffs, and there are absolutely some like little dirty fingerprints, but nothing
Mhm.
I don't think that couldn't sort of be gently cleaned off with
Yep.
I've got like a spray cleaner and a sort of anti-static brush thing. So to me, this looked like a good gamble for $5.
Mm. Mhm.
And it is an album. It's an album that I've had in my Discogs wish list. So that
Okay.
was cool to
Perfect.
just find it in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you find any other gems while you're at it?
I did. I'm a sucker for Aussie artists.
Okay.
And so I found a US edition of Hunters and Collectors Human Frailty,
Hey.
also for $5, which was pretty
Mhm.
good. Now I do have this, but I don't have this pressing. So I thought this would
Right.
be kind of fun to get a second pressing and an American pressing versus I think I have the Aussie one. And again, opened it up, and a couple of little sort of scuffs and a couple of little fingerprints, but otherwise it looked in pretty good condition. And I thought $5 again. That's I'm happy to take a little bit of a gamble with that one.
Mhm. Yep. It'll be interesting to see how the pressings compare on that one between that and the one you've already got.
This one was the biggest gamble, I think, but it's actually a modern album, but it's an Australian band. It's the Temper Trap.
Oh, I've heard of them, but I don't know their music by name. I've probably heard it.
So I've listened to this album digitally, and I did like it. Their first album was
Conditions?
Conditions. Yes, amazing album. I love that
Oh,
album.
really?
I've
Okay.
listened to that a lot. You would probably know a bunch of them. I think Fader and Sweet Disposition and Love Lost were. had a lot of
Probably so.
radio
I've heard on the
play.
radio. Yeah.
So I think you would know them, and I really enjoyed that album. And then the next one, which I think was a self-titled album, was pretty good.
Mhm.
And then this one that I've got here, Thick as Thieves, is I think it's technically their most recent album, but I think they may have actually broken up. I don't
Yeah.
know it as well, but I saw it on vinyl in very good condition in this random secondhand antique store, and I thought, let's just give this one a go. So again, bit of a gamble there. Ironically, it was the most expensive. It was $17. I don't know why it was $17, but it could just be the fact that it's essentially brand new. So that may have
Mm.
been why. So that was cool.
And how does that compare, say, the $17 for the Temper Trap album? How does that compare to what you would expect to pay for an album like that on Discogs?
It's a great question. Were that a new release on and buying that brand new on vinyl? I mean, I think I would be paying about $40, maybe 50. It sort of
Mhm.
really depends. There's a store here in the US called Urban Outfitters. Do you have that in Australia?
I've heard of them. Yeah, I don't know if we have got them here. I've definitely heard of them.
It's a clothing store. It's a sort of a hip, trendy young person's clothing store, and they may have been doing this for a long time, but I haven't been into the store for a while. But they now have a vinyl section, which is fascinating.
Okay.
So they sell new vinyl, and they're only selling like the hippest, newest sort of urban outfitter style, pop, bit of rap, bit of whatever. I don't know. But what's fascinating, their prices are insanely expensive.
Oh, really?
I went in there and everything I picked, like I think the cheapest, I reckon the average price of a new vinyl pressing was about $50, $50,
Wow.
which was I sort of almost fell over. I went up to one of the people that worked there and I said, are these prices real? I picked up an album from, I had two in my hand just to sort of, check with the sales associate person. One was Chappelle Roan's, whatever her famous one, where she got all the Grammys. I can't remember what that's
Mhm.
called. That
I
was
don't know.
$50. And then the other one was literally someone I'd never heard of, and I don't even remember what it was called. But like because I thought I'm going to pick up one that, like a Taylor Swift, and then something that I'm guessing is less known, just to see if it had something to do with the popularity of and the mass market appeal and production of the artist. Nope, they were both the same price. They were both basically $50 or $48, something like that. So it's crazy. Just coming back to my recent haul, I got
Oh,
Robert Palmer, Heavy Nova.
that is such a good album, that
It
one.
is such an amazing album.
Yep.
It is, I got it for $6. It's in good condition, but what's fascinating, the actual record itself is really thin. It
Really?
is thinner than most other records that I have. When we talked a little bit about heavyweight vinyl and
Yeah.
audiophile
180 and
vinyl sort of weightings before. We talked about 180 grams, 160 gram, et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually probably going to go weigh this because I have a feeling that it's very, very light. I have a feeling it could be 100 grams
140 or
or
something
something.
more. Yeah.
It does not feel sturdy,
Interesting. I'll be
and so I
curious
wonder
to
if that
know.
could be why it's so cheap. I wonder if they,
Yeah.
they did a. This looks like it was 1988, and so I wonder if there was, a budget pressing that was thin. I don't know.
And were by that stage, because I've got that on CD. I bought that album on CD, and I wonder if that was one where they were like, "CD's the new thing. We're going to prioritize CD. We'll make a vinyl record, but let's not put too much budget into it."
Right, and there was also at one point there was uh, an intentional creation of different tiers of quality. Like at some point, the industry went, okay, we know we need audiophile quality, so we need 180 grams and 160 grams and 200 gram audiophile, but we also need really cheap because there are people that are going to be playing these records and they're going to treat them like shit and they're going to
Mm.
play them on really crappy systems and they're going to play them loud, but no one's really listening for the quality. So let's start creating like budget cheap lines, and so that's fascinating to think about. How to identify that so that you can either
Yeah.
avoid or just sort of know when you're sort of going into collecting whether you're inadvertently purchasing or intentionally purchasing something that's sort of in a budget line and therefore sort of thinner, lower weight and may not be able to sort of give you the richness and the depth that you want versus
Yeah.
then intentionally going for a heavier weight.
On that note, have you listened to Heavy Nova yet?
Not this one. I only just got it on the weekend and I haven't had a chance to get everything set up. But I mean, I know the
Right.
album, but I haven't listened to this pressing.
That pressing, yeah. So if I can set you a little piece of homework, I'd love if you get a chance to listen to it before we next record.
Okay.
I'd love to know how it stacks up sound quality wise, because from memory, it's quite a good bit of mastering and production.
Oh, it says here the album was recorded at Logic Studios in Milan, Italy, and Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas.
The mixing engineer for this, Eric Thorngren, was a very good mixing engineer based on some of the other stuff he's done. So he's produced Kenny Wayne Shepherd and the Eurythmics. Just having a look at some of the others he's done. He's got some Talking Heads are in there as well. He's a pretty impressive resume of people. He's done Grace Jones albums, Violent Femmes albums. He's got a really broad range. Hunters and Collectors come up in there too.
Nice.
So he's a really solid mixing engineer. When I saw the name come up, I'm like, I'm sure I've seen that somewhere before. So from memory, having listened to Heavy Nova on good systems, and I'm sure I've even referenced it in some of my reviews. It's not necessarily a prime test track kind of album, but it's definitely a really solid album. It should be one that should sound good. So it'll be really interesting to know if the that cheap pressing has degraded the sound significantly. Like if you put it on and go, no, this sounds really meh, that'll be very telling. So I'd love to know that. But what else have you got?
Absolutely. And my last one is The Pretenders, Learning to Crawl, which is a great album. And this is really, really good quality. As best as I can tell, as we just talked about in the standing in the record store, the packaging, the sleeve, everything looks like it's in really good condition. The record looks really good. It's a really nice thick stock, a nice thick weight. And this is a fantastic album. This is from 82, 83. Mm-hmm. And it's I think it might be my favorite Pretenders album.
Okay.
And it's been on my Discogs wish list for a while. So sort of circling back, I haven't had a chance to listen to these. I must admit, I'm a little nervous because it's the first, because these are albums that I want. And so I'm hoping that I will be very disappointed, I guess, if there's, if they sound like crap, or if there's, somehow the stylus can't track, or there's big scratches on it that I sort of wasn't able to see. I don't think there will be. But I'm a little nervous about that. But to your point earlier, your question earlier, $5, that feels like an okay amount of money to sort of have a little bit of a gamble on. Maybe sort of $15, $20. I really want to be a bit more certain that that I know what I'm paying for, and then definitely sort of above $20. I want to know, I want to trust, I want it to be graded, and I want to have faith and trust that the person or the system that was doing that grading knows their stuff. And that's why Discogs is so fantastic, because you can see their reviews and ratings and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I think if I could leave a question to the listener is, what do you do when you wander into a record store, a secondhand record store, or just someone sort of selling records that hasn't graded and maybe doesn't know a lot about the condition? How do you best sort of make that judgment call? Now, obviously, you could listen to it, but neither of the stores that I was in had record players, so there actually was no ability to listen to it and see how it would sound. So would love to hear tips and tricks from folks if they have them.
Brilliant. Yeah. So askthegroovepod@gmail.com. And Nick, one of my burning questions was what you've just asked viewers. I wanted to turn back to you, which is, if you've just bought something from Discogs, let's say you've found something that's mint minus, whatever it is in their scale, but you've chosen something that should be at a certain level and you get it, other than obviously putting it on and listening to it, what are the things that you immediately look for when you've received it to make sure you've gotten what you expected?
Yes. One of the first things is the sleeve, the quality of the sleeve. I want it to, well, first of all, I'll double check what was this, how was this graded? How was the sleeve and how was the disc graded? And so the first thing is I get it out of the packaging. Does this match my expectations? Just sort of visually. And almost always the answer is yes. I've had a couple where the grading of the sleeve was, right, I should say the condition that the sleeve arrived in felt lower than the way it was graded on Discogs. And there's a bit of a there's a practice, I think, with some sellers where they'll reseal things, like they'll put they'll shrink wrap them, or, and I think the challenge is that some folks will be a little bit dodgy, and they'll do it to try and make it look like it's actually sort of new old stock or something, whereas others are doing it as a protection mechanism to, just in transit, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think that sometimes it can be a little bit aggressive, and it can actually, that shrink wrap itself can actually place pressure on the edges of the sleeve and can sort of cause them to sort of, warp or bend in a little bit. So I've had that happen a couple of times. That's always a little bit disappointing, but most of the time the sleeves they're going into their own little protective sleeve, and they're going onto the shelf. So there's that, and then the next thing I do is I play it, and I put it on the platter, and I've got a couple of different brushes based on whether it needs sort of a more of a significant clean or not. But what's also amazing is a lot of these sellers now, they are like sonically cleaning every record. And it's actually really easy to find. Well, I should say, in my experience, I've been able to shop around and find sellers who have ultrasonic cleaning equipment. And so one of their sort of value adds is everything gets ultrasonically cleaned. And so, there's no need to. I mean, obviously you get it out, verify, but yeah, it looks, anything that's been ultrasonically cleaned often looks almost brand new.
Brand new, yeah.
So that's always a great sort of value add or a bonus when you can find a seller that does that as part of the resale process.
Brilliant. Cool. I'll be interested to see what people have to say to us, what they can share as in terms of tips, because I know with my limited vinyl experience, I would only be able to do what you do, which is take the vinyl out, tilt it to get the light to reflect off it in different ways, and look for obvious visual blemishes in the surface, but maybe there's more to it. And obviously the other thing, I guess, is warping, looking for any warping of the disc as well. But beyond that, I'd be hopeless other than putting it on and trying it.
Yeah, warping's an important one, obviously, to be able to see if it's flat. That's pretty obvious, though, certainly for significant warping.
So I think I was going to talk about something else, but I think we'll save it for the next episode. As a teaser, I'm seeing a trend in new products, and it's an exciting trend in new products being able to be smarter. And I don't mean in an AI sense, but having extra functionality baked in that I'm guessing there's new processing capabilities available now that we used not to have. There's miniaturized circuits like Class D amplifiers that can pump out a bunch of power without having to be very big, so they can be integrated to other devices. There's some really, really cool things coming out in the world of audio at the moment that I'm excited by. So I think we'll talk about that in the next episode. Nick, did you have anything you wanted to cover off before we wrap up here?
I think I have hogged way too much of the airwaves already. So no, I think I'm good.
Cool. No, that was really interesting. I really enjoyed. I was surprised how many interesting places that conversation took us. That was really fun for me. I hope it was for the listeners as well, because I really enjoyed exploring that a little bit. And as always, if people have thoughts, opinions, or questions on the topic, askthegroovepod@gmail.com. But that was really fun. So let's wrap it up there. We'll park the new and exciting trend in audio products for the next episode. And of course, any other questions people want to send in for us to chat about, we'll do that too. And other than that, we'll wrap it up for here and look forward to chatting to people again next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Groove Pod. Until next time, happy listening, and we hope you'll join us again.